evening, Demon fans, and welcome back to the Demonland podcast. My name is Andy, and the only positive that I can think of that has come out of this weekend for the Demons is that it is now mathematically impossible for us to not make the finals this season. Thank heavens for the inconsistent teams on the cusp of the top 8. Joining me tonight to dissect the disappointing loss on Friday night is veteran Demonlander George. Good evening, George.
Demonlanders, good evening, Ben Man, and hopefully everybody enjoys this therapy session following the loss, and that we might be able to provide some sort of solace to the Demonland faithful as a result.
Yes, let's hope. I think the whole of Demonland and all Demon supporters really do need a bit of... I don't know. I said on one of the threads today, I don't think they need the counselling. I think they need an exorcism. And hopefully we can do that before the finals. Also joining us tonight and to hopefully give me a sliver of hope that this season is not lost, B-Man. Good evening, B-Man.
Good evening, Andy. Good evening, George. Good evening, Demonlanders. The season's 100% not lost. But, I mean, I'm probably like all Demons fans. I still feel just sick in the guts from Friday night. I won't come as a surprise to anyone, but win or lose, usually if we're winning, I hoover up as much media as I can and, watch the replay. Usually always watch the replay, even when we lose. Sometimes I'll watch it a couple of times. I literally have not read any football media. I haven't listened to any football media on the radio or the television, or the replay or Fox or KO. I think that's the first time. I can't even remember the last time that was the case, and it was just because I was so shattered after the loss. The only positive on the weekend is it was Ori's Group 3 Ori Stakes Day on Saturday, which is the traditional opener for me for my punting for the Spring Carnival. So that was a good way to distract myself on the Saturday and lost money on the Saturday and the Friday night. So it wasn't a great weekend, all things considered.
Surely, Ben Man, you enjoyed listening to BT and replay?
No, I didn't. I couldn't bring myself to going to watch that replay. I went. What a phenomenal game. I mean, that's probably the thing that most incredible game of footy I can recall, home and away game. That's the best, most incredible game I can remember since the Geelong semi-final.
Yeah, it was like a final. It was finals-like atmosphere.
It was finals-like intensity and atmosphere. It was an incredible game to be at, but I couldn't bring myself to listening to Brian Taylor or any of the pro pies rubbish that I'm sure has been, the media's been awash with this week. I'm not going near it.
Maybe we need to be the underdog for a little while. I think being the front runner didn't suit us so well. I did for the first 10 rounds.
Funnily enough, I actually watched a fair bit of footy on the weekend and enjoyed it. I enjoyed watching the games I watched, and there was some really cracking games of footy. But I couldn't read or do anything about the Melbourne game.
Yeah, it gets me as well. Whenever we have a loss, I like to sort of peruse Twitter and such, and it makes it really hard, after a loss, because especially on a Friday night when you're the only game in town, and every photo you look at's Jamie Elliott or Jeremy Howe or bloody Cox.
But there's losses and there's losses, and it's the loss when we'll get into it obviously, but we should have won the game, should have, could have, would have, all of that sort of stuff. But, that it's a different loss. I didn't feel anywhere near the angst during when we got beaten by them last time, for instance. It sort of, I was happy to watch the replay and do all of those sorts of things after that loss. But this one had a different feel about it in terms of its impact, that's for sure.
All right, well, let's get straight into the match wrap-up because the sooner that this game exits my brain, the better. And for me, the alarm bells were ringing and the portents were gloomy when Ed Langdon claimed on radio on the eve of the blockbuster that our opponents, Collingwood, were a one-trick pony and that they were all duck and no dinner. And I just knew then that comments like that would be used against us to rev up the other side. And within moments of the match starting, the filth were right into Langdon. The D started the match out hot, despite that, and eventually getting out to a 4-goal lead midway through the second quarter, only to have the lead whittled away by the final term. And it's not just the diminishing of leads. that happened by the end of the matches. It seems that we come out hot in some quarters only to concede some late goals, allowing our opposition back into the contest. And this is an all too familiar occurrence in Demons games this season, particularly in the latter part of the season, and particularly against our competitors in the top 8. And our wastefulness going inside 50 is a massive issue on the eve of finals. And despite going inside 50 65 times to Collingwood's 41, we only scored 34% of the time, as opposed to their scoring 46% of the time when they went inside 50. The D's also dominated the clearances, 52 to 32, and 21 to 7 of those were out of the middle. And then when you add up that we had 93 more disposals, 22 more contested possessions, but we still managed to lose this game. That's almost unheard of in AFL footy when one team dominates another in the statistics like that and then doesn't go on to win. And we'll most likely go into more depth about all of this later as we have some questions again from some of our loyal listeners in regards to this. But our current forward line structure for me just isn't working. The one tall forward option with the resting rucks failed again. Players were bombing it in and burning loose men inside 50 on more than a couple of occasions. And when we weren't marking or scoring, the ball was rebounding outside our offensive 50 way too often. The Pies were able to rebound outside our 50 on almost 50 occasions. And that leads into our next problem with our forward line, and that is the lack of pressure from our forwards, allowing the easy exits and our opposition being able to transition effortlessly off half-back to launch their own scoring opportunities. 8 tackles from inside our forward 50 the other night, from the 65 entries to Collingwood's 18 tackles in their forward 50 from their 41 entries. Neil Bullen 0, Pickett 0, Spargo 0, Brown 0, Melksham 2 and Fritsch 2. That's 4 tackles from only 2 of our 6 forwards. And to me, that's pathetic. Our pressure was a hallmark, our forward pressure was a hallmark of our premiership win last season. And this year, our lack of pressure is a sign of our downfall and fall from grace. We're not winning a final, let alone a premiership, if there's not a turnaround in form in that area. And we can't defend leads at the moment, and this lack of pressure is a big reason why. And neither of our resting ruckmen were able to provide a goal. And sure, Max had his opportunities, but his horrible goal-kicking style has returned. And the net result of our rucks resting, and I say that in inverted commas, because using our rucks as the second tall doesn't afford them much of a rest, leaving them exhausted at the pointy end of the match. And I've been banging on for years that eventually our inaccuracy in front of the big sticks was going to cost us a match. And well, our inaccuracy in front of the big sticks finally did cost us a match. I thought our mids dominated, as evidenced by their contested and clearance work, and our backs, for the most part, performed okay, despite almost conceding 100 points. But when the opposition are gifted 4 or 5 dubious free kicks directly in front of goals, and your opposition can't seem to miss a set shot on goal if they tried, well, what are you going to do? That brings me to the Maggots. I haven't bitched much about the men in yellow this season. For the most part, we've broken even in the adjudication department. We were absolutely crucified by the umpires this week, particularly in regards to those dropping/holding the ball decisions in front of Collingwood's goals. And to add insult to injury, we weren't reciprocated when it came to tackles in our own forward 50, and nor should we, because most of the frees that Collingwood were gifted in front of goals weren't frees either. And look, I won't blame the loss on the umpires, but it certainly did not help. And that's it for me for my wrap-up of these games. Guys, do you want to make any general comments? As I said, keeping in mind that we have a lot of questions and comments from listeners. Big Man, I believe you want to add something to say.
Yeah, just a couple of things. I mean, in last week's show, I got it wrong I underestimated Collingwood, bottom line, is that I think we played a pretty good game of footy. In fact, a fantastic game of footy in many ways. I went back, I meant to say last week, but I went back the previous week and watched the Suns game before last week's game, and I watched the West Coast game from last week, before the Pies game from last year, I should say. And I'd forgotten how scrappy we were in that game. That game was it was wet and windy and pretty ugly sort of night, but we were level at half time. We only really had about a 10-minute patch in the third quarter where we got on top of them. And the lightning break came, and so it's a bit hard to tell what happened. We talked about it on the podcast this time last year. But the fact remains is that they almost ran us down in the last 10 minutes. We ran out of steam in that last 10 minutes. Maybe we put the cue in the rack, but nonetheless, the fact remains we were way more impressive in this game than we were in the corresponding game last year against West Coast. So I thought we played fantastic, but I'll put my hand up and say I underestimated the Pies significantly. I thought they were just fantastic on their night. Their pressure, their ability to sustain that pressure was incredible. I think, as I said, that was the most finals-like home and away game that I can ever recall being to, just about. It was a phenomenal atmosphere at the ground. Their pressure was immense from the beginning of the game to the end, but most importantly in the second half and in that last half of the second quarter. We flagged a little bit. That was pretty evident, but they kept on going. I really underestimated the impact of De Goey, and I thought he didn't have a huge game except for that last 15 minutes. And I was sitting on the members' side wing up on that middle level, and he just smashed through a contest at one point, and it was like Viney on steroids. It was like Viney's big brother. They were seriously impressive. Their ability to sustain that pressure was just phenomenal. So, if they are able to maintain that pressure through to the end of the season, I think we're tracking on exactly the right path. In terms of the probability of us winning, I think that certainly we've got less chances now because they are a serious contender, and that's thrown a monkey wrench in, that we could fall out of the top four. So there's that factor as well. But just a couple of things tactically that I thought were really fascinating. There was a lot of talk about our forward line, but we scored more than enough to win, even with the ridiculous number of gilt edge opportunities we burnt through that game. But our defence was the real problem. They were really, really clever the way they spread our tools. Partly that was because how quickly they moved it, and they moved it quickly. They're not as crazy quickly as I thought they might. Though apparently they played on 15% more often than they normally do, and they play on a lot. They're a high play-on team. Someone on the Demonland thread, on the post-game thread, made the excellent point that they played Elliott really deep, which was clever on a couple of levels. It stopped May being the anchor, so it meant that he couldn't be that last man coming out at the ball. It messed with our structure, and they were moving it quickly, so they did a great job of isolating our tools. And I thought, for instance, all of our tools had pretty poor games. Maybe Lever did well on Ginnivan, but Petty is probably the worst game I can recall him having for a long time, and May's never looked quite right for a few weeks, I reckon. But that they really did a great job of isolating them. But playing Elliott deep also dragged Hibbo deep, and it meant that he was down deep in the square, so we got no bounce from him off the halfback flank like we normally do. And on top of that, Elliott killed him for good measure. That was one of Hibbo's worst games for a while as well. He's been in great form, but it also really exacerbated not having Gus back there. And I think that really hurt us in this game, as we really missed his defensive smarts, but also how many intercept marks and marks he's taking down back. All of them were taken away. But, leaving their tactics aside. So I thought that was really clever, but leaving their tactics aside, all our defenders had mares, didn't they? May's been out of form. Lever looks injured still, though I thought he did well, as I said, on Ginnivan. And Hibbo had his worst game since coming back in. Rivers looked flat-footed, and Salem's nowhere near his best. But the funny thing about the tactics was their pressure was amazing, I thought, all game, but particularly in that last quarter. And there was finals-like pressure. It was a cliche, but that's what it was. By far the best pressure we've faced this season, I thought. And we couldn't go with them right to the end, which was a shock, but not a huge shock because, we're probably at 75% of where we want to be in terms of our peak. And I'm really hoping that they are at their peak, because if they're not, they're a even bigger contender for the flag than we are. But from our side, tactically, it was such a perplexing game. There was a whole number of things, but you mentioned Langer's comments, Andy. The thing that didn't get much coverage was the fact that what he was trying to say, I think, and what he did say at the end of these no duck, no dinner comments, was that we love to bore the fans on a Friday night. We look to play boring footy. And I think they were trying to set that up because we came out and did exactly the opposite. It was like the Dogs game, so much like the Dogs game, in that we didn't look to control the tempo hardly at all. We drove it being a run and gun for the first half. Now, like maybe there's a debate about that, but from where I sat, it was us who drove it. We drove the tempo. We played a super high tempo game, and it worked. We just didn't capitalise. The problem with the model was that, and I was shocked that we never looked to control the tempo in that first half, to slow it down. And maybe if we had have slowed it down a little bit, we might have had a little bit of fuel left in the tank at the end to get us through. But it's that high risk, high reward style. And I wonder whether lots of people getting frustrated with us kicking to the pockets. But I hope that those same people notice that we gave up 3 goals because we turned it over in the middle corridor in that first half, and that was on the back of our aggressive risk-reward style. So we were playing a run-and-gun style, and we needed to take advantage of it. It was almost as if Goody had come out and said he wants to get a lead at halftime that was unassailable, and we didn't get there. But we lost goals. Like it was ridiculous. They had 17 inside 50s to 41 at halftime. 41 inside 50s is a season high, or an equal season high at halftime. They had 17. They scored. They were running at 50%. They were 8 goals at halftime, 8-2 or something. So they were at 50%. They were over 50 or just on 50% of inside 50 to goals ratio, let alone scoring ratio. We were at 40% scoring ratio. And there was only one period where it looked like a Melbourne game to me, and that was in the first 10 minutes of the third quarter, where we looked to lock it in our forward half and did so brilliantly. They could barely move it past the halfway line in that first 10 minutes. But that was more about us stopping their tempo and stop disrupting their ball movement, not us going slow deliberately to take the heat out of the game. But there were also a number of other weird things, I thought, tactically. The crazy number of handballs. Now, lots of people have said that was about their pressure, but the numbers, that wasn't true in the first half. Our numbers, handball numbers, were crazy in the first half. We'd doubled their handball count at halftime. I looked up and I was shocked. That was clearly a tactic because we were handling their pressure in the first half. We were smashing them. I mean, we were as impressive in that first half as we were since the grand final, I reckon. We should have been 6 goals up easily. And then we went next level with the long clearing handballs that I've been talking about. They were ridiculous. They looked like they were deliberately trying to handball 30, 40 metres. And then there were a number of other departures from our template. We had played the one tall, Melksham as a defensive forward, albeit that he played a few games late last year in that role. Gus into the middle, which was funny at this time of year. Harms as a sub. Jackson and Maxi, as George has pointed out, almost 50-50 in the ruck. Gawn playing deep forward, May only taking about 60 to 70% of the kickouts and kicking out less often to that one point that everyone complained about. It really looked as if they're trying to implement some tweaks or pretty significant changes to our game plan, or at least adding some tweaks. And I felt like that was a big factor in the last quarter because, yes, their pressure was great, but under pressure, we looked like we were not quite sure what we were doing with some of our handballing, and then our handballs increased, obviously. So I really thought that unpredictability was a big factor in how we managed that last quarter. It was just such a strange game from that tactical perspective. So that was one of the things that jumped out to me, and I'm not quite sure whether I've got that right or why that would be the case. But I'm just wondering whether Goody's thinking that, that thing, whether other teams have worked us out, that he recognises that the only way to beat us really is to play ballistic fast ball movement that the Pies could do. I was amazed at their ability to sustain that for the entire game. I think that's the only way that we can be beaten. If teams fall back into that pattern of playing slow and allowing us to control it, they won't get through us. Maybe he recognises that and wants to add a layer of us being ballistic as well, and being able to score quickly as a way of protecting against it. But it seems there's clear, at this late point in the season, to be introducing what seems to me pretty big tactical changes is and positional changes as well is really curious, I reckon.
Did they wait too long to implement it? Because we don't have much room to practice this.
Well, even Gus going, people knock Harms, but it was like Harms as a sub, and Gus had a good first half, but second half he was pretty ineffectual, and we did really miss his defence down back.
George, anything you want to add before we go to questions?
Not a great deal. I agree with Binman. This was almost a near replica of the Bulldogs game, even down to the last 3 minutes of the game. We failed to take our chances in front of goal in particular. Both Collingwood and the Dogs, when they were playing, took full advantage of every opportunity they had. Will they be able to replicate that in another game? Maybe not. They're like Ben Mann's just said. The number of goals that they kicked, not just from set shots but from general play as well. Normally, you'd expect well less than 50% of those to go through, but they were right off the charts with that. And in any other game, that wouldn't have been sufficient for them to win the game. The other thing that they did was that, particularly that forward half pressure. Elliott got 2 goals, if I remember, from tackling. There's the game in itself. If we had the equivalent sort of inputs from our forwards, you'd think that we would get 1 or 2 opportunities, at least keep the ball in there for further ones. But yeah, we lost that game ourselves. They did everything that we should have done. Hopefully we learn the lessons of this, but there was very little between the two sides in the end. A kick here or there, a bit of luck here or there, an umpire's call here or there would have made the difference, and we'd be feeling completely differently. But yeah, it was a very different Melbourne game from what we've seen. It is going to be very interesting.
Yeah.
In the next couple of weeks, that style might absolutely blow other sides away if we can do things like kick straight. That'll make a big difference in a game. But we have been on the high horse about that all season, unfortunately. So let's see what comes out.
And just one other thought. I mean, we'll get to it, but you're 100% right. I mean, kicking, it was as simple as that. Is that we can't kick goals we don't deserve to win. They kick their goals, and on those goals they kicked in the first half, the rebound, we dominated that game. We're only 17 points up at half time. That's because we leaked those goals on rebound. Now, that's the risk you take when you play high-tempo football. It's like soccer. If you attack and you're pushing, you open yourself up for the rebound, and they took advantage almost every time. It felt like every time it went down there, they were going to score. I mean, 17 entries for 8-2 at half time was nuts. It felt a bit like maybe I was thinking maybe Goody wanted to get a match-winning, unassailable lead at halftime to take the crowd out of it, because they were definitely a factor, I thought, in the game in the last quarter. It was, you could feel it. It was quite an intense environment. It was like Geelong-Melbourne, except in that game, in that semi-final that I was talking about, except in that game it was more Melbourne. In this game it felt more Collingwood. Just the final thing, Andy, is another weird thing that happened. And I wondered whether Goody was really pissed off. He was pissed off in the presser, you could tell. And I reckon he might have been pissed off at halftime. I'd love to know what he said to the players at halftime, because you don't see this very often. But I don't know if you noticed, but our players came out onto the field while the Auskickers were still on the ground.
Yeah, they came out very early.
Very, very early.
And I wasn't sure whether they came out early or Collingwood was out late, but yeah.
Well, no, there were still Auskickers on the ground. Yeah. So that's normally we definitely came out early, because normally they clear the Auskickers out. And I haven't seen that for ages. And I've seen it lots of times at Melbourne when we've been 10 goals down at halftime and the coaches sent them out at halftime to go do whatever. But I just thought that was a really curious thing.
Do you think he said to them, "Get the F out, I can't look at you anymore"?
No, I think they came in with a plan and they didn't execute it. They leaked those goals. The plan was to go hard and to be 6-7 goals up at halftime, and we bloody well should have been 6-7 goals up at halftime. I mean, really, the amount of opportunities that we missed direct in front, like Maxi, come on, give me a break, and the amount of times that we missed free players inside 50, it was just infuriating.
And that's exactly what Goodwin said in his presser: failure to execute, wasn't it? So if you don't do what you're meant to do, you get the result you deserve.
Yeah, so selection will be really interesting this week, because that's as angry as I've seen him. And, that coming out at halftime is something I haven't seen a Melbourne footy team have to do for a while.
Well, before we get into questions proper, Demon Lander Stu was a bit late getting a question in, but I just see the question he said now. He said, if we play the same game 10 times, how many times do you think we'd win? I feel it's 8 or even 9. I know they played very well in the second half, but it feels like at least 30 to 40 events throughout the game went their way. So fortunate were they if only a few of those events go our way instead, we win. Big man, you think?
It's possible to know, but I do know that the coaches put a fair bit of stock in this champion data expected score stat. And I've heard Hardwick reference it a couple of times. I've heard Goody reference it, and I've heard through the traps that it's as a way of looking at the game to get a handle on exactly how it should be. And we won that by 13 points on expected score. I would have said we should have won it by 5 goals on expected score, but that's given all of the data points in there. So you play that game 10 times, we win 8, maybe 7, but the bottom line is that they deserve to win. I'm not taking anything away from it. There's no excuses. We should have had that game put to bed. You miss those sorts of goals, and full credit to them. They were great. I was super impressed by them, and I thought their field kicking was magnificent. Nick Dacos didn't have a huge game numbers wise, but he just changes the game with his ability to hit targets. And of course, Pendles, who has so much space and time, because he used to be a basketballer apparently, his ability to hit targets laterally and on an angle is, we don't have many players in our team who can do that, which makes me think, maybe we need Bowie back in this team to give us some good kicking off halfback and some zip back there.
All right, we've got some questions and comments from our loyal listeners that we've that we'll read out and attempt to answer as best as we can. If you'd like to join us live on the show, give us a call on 0390163666. That's 0390163666, and I'll answer your call on mute and get to you as soon as we can. If you call whilst we've already got someone on the line, or if they're on hold, it'll just ring out, so try again when they're off. You can always leave a message during the week on 0390163666. We don't answer the line, so you just let it ring out and leave your message at the beep. If you follow us on Facebook, Instagram or Twitter, you can direct message us and we'll read your question out like we do for posters on demonland.com who have written their messages for us in the podcast thread. So without further ado, here are some of the questions. Wells11 asks, be great to hear your opinions on whether our game style has been surpassed in 2022. Long to the pack in the pocket suddenly feels very outdated. Now, B-Man, you sort of covered this a little bit in your talk about you think we sort of tweaked our game plan anyway. And I guess he's sort of questioning whether we've been worked out. Do we need to add any more to that, or you think you've answered that one sufficiently?
Well, just a comment about kicking to the pockets is one thing is that, again, it's my comment about you can look at the forward lines. It was really, if we'd kicked straight, no one would be talking about our forward line. We scored enough to win that game. The weird thing about our adherence to kicking to the pockets is two things. Is one, as I said, we gave up 3 goals because when we didn't, we got burnt and they turned it over in the corridor. That's why it's the percentage play to go to the pockets. So the weird thing about that was, though, is that we sometimes didn't go to the pockets when we had free players in them. I was sitting on the members wing, and there was a handful of times. There was one time where Lever had the ball. Lever seemed to ignore Cozzy twice in the same bit of play, it looked like. Cozzy was waving his hands. He was completely free by himself in the pocket. So ironically, the time to go to the pocket. But the funny thing about the setup is they're playing like they've got the second tall. That's how it looks. Like they're playing the setup as if they've got the second tall, and it's just screaming out for the second tall, and it's so disappointing that Weed hasn't made that his own. I mean, we can say Weed all we like, but now we need him. Now we need him playing that position, and we are playing as if we've got a second tall when we don't have it. So, yes, our pressure numbers weren't great. I thought Cozzy had a stinker, to be honest. I wasn't impressed with his game at all, but we weren't bringing it to ground in the way we needed to. Having said that, Melk did a pretty good job. Their intercept numbers were down, and Moore had his second lowest number of intercept marks all season. So he did his job, but we just weren't. We played as if we had had the second tall, and we didn't.
And that really highlights it, doesn't it, Bitterman, that if you think you've got a second tall there, that's why the ball's not coming to ground, or why the ball's not coming to the smaller forward opportunities. It's really disappointing, especially when we're expecting our one tall, Ben Brown, to be running up the ground as well.
And he ran himself into the ground, didn't he?
Yeah, he's ran himself into the ground, and it's not surprising he's got nothing left in his legs at the end.
Yeah, when he gets it up on the wing, there's no Ben Brown to kick
right,
it to.
Yeah. And as Andy said in his opening comments, the resting ruck in the forward line has not worked. It simply has not worked. So,
and Max was awesome, but he's carrying something, I reckon. He can't elevate. Yeah. I mean, he's not a great jumper anyway, but he wasn't bringing the ball to ground down the forward line, let alone kicking the goals that he should have kicked.
Yeah.
Dr. Gonzo wants to know if, when we face Collingwood again in September, what do we need to do differently to get the win? His third time a charm.
Kick straight.
Kick straight.
But anything tactically we need to sort of mix around, or just hopefully works this time?
Look, honestly, if we kick straight, that game's over. It's as simple as that. The opportunity's there. 65 inside. We didn't utilise 65 entries into the forward line well at all. But if we'd kick straight when they're given the set shot opportunities in particular, and there are a number of them, Max unfortunately was probably the worst protagonist. But if we kick straight, that game's over. It's as simple as that.
Totally simple as that. And it was a weird night too, because there were a few times where we missed absolute sitters, and it wasn't like the normally where we miss lots of shots from the boundary, and so you can forgive them. We were missing them from right in front. I mean, Track in the bloody shadows of the second half had an open goal. We'd done brilliantly to get open and somehow managed to miss an open goal. But they had a happy knack when we missed one, an easy one, of it going straight up the other end and them drilling it. And in the last quarter, Fritter should have got a goal, would have put the 7 points up, and we should have been able to control it from that point. He misses what he should have got. It goes straight up the other end and they get a goal. And good kicking is good football. It's as simple as that, and they took their chances.
Yep.
At the Break of Gorn, a great name, has a couple of questions he wants answers, so we'll take them one at a time. The first one is, why can't we handle opposition pressure as well as last year? This was evident in the Pies game, which led to massive over-handballing. Now, big man, you reckon it wasn't the pressure that caused our handballing, but
not in the first half, no.
They were pressuring us a lot. We didn't have any time sometimes when we got the ball. We had to unload it very quickly. So why can't we handle that pressure?
I don't fully ascribe to that. I think we can handle the pressure. I think we did handle the pressure. We smashed them in the first half. They couldn't handle our pressure. That's the bottom line, is they couldn't. I had loved to know what the expected score was at halftime. And I think we ran out a bit of steam in the end, the last 10 minutes, and that was the 10 minutes that decided the game of football. I think that we were handballing high, and we came into the game with a clear strategy to handball high, and that's hard to turn off in the last quarter. But definitely their pressure meant that we did the ring around the rosy type handballs, but we were already doing those type of handballs. If you accept that the sort of loading idea, we're 7 weeks away from our peak, probably 75% of where we want to be. They're probably, hopefully, as I said earlier, at 100% or 95% of where they're going to get to, and they were stronger for longer. I think that's more to do with handling the pressure. When you're fatigued, it's pretty hard to do it. We couldn't move it. We couldn't transition it, could we? From in that last 10 minutes, it felt like it was their game, because it was only going to be a lucky break that somehow or other. We had the chance. Bloody Sparrow smashed into Ben Brown with 2 minutes to go when we had a lead. Ben Brown marks that. We almost can control the game for the rest of that and win that game. But we could never really – it never felt like in that last 10 minutes we had enough legs to be able to get that overlap run to get a goal out the back.
The other thing about the pressure is that it's been bought by different teams in 2022 compared to 2021. Collingwood were useless last year as a team. They never bought that sort of pressure. All of a sudden, they bring the pressure, and everybody thinks that we're the reason, we can't handle it. It just wasn't there last year, so it's not surprising. Look what's happened to Richmond over the last couple of years. They used to be the highest pressure side in the competition by a long shot. Where are they now? Struggling to get in and around the 8. you go through these phases. So it's the problem's not that we can't handle it. It's coming from different directions, and people are expecting the same responses as they got last year. It happens every year.
Yeah, and I'd say that was a finals-like game. I reckon anyone who was there would feel that. Like, it was an incredibly intense game of footy. It was a finals game, and we're not yet at final readiness in terms of our preparation, and they are. They're hardened. They've played a lot of those close games, and they're a lot fitter and stronger than I had thought they were. Like, they were seriously fit and strong. I was watching them through the binoculars at three-quarter time, hoping to see them all hunched over like Brisbane were. And I tell you, that wasn't the case. They looked pretty fresh, and they played that way through to the end. And I hope their wall's coming soon towards them.
At the break of Gorn, second question is, how are we going to stop fast ball moving sides? The Pies played on 15% more than their average to ensure that we couldn't set up our defence, which really rattled us. Is this a midfield issue?
It's a hard one, that one. I think it's partially the forward line problem, that they're getting that first break very quickly from the half-back line, where all good slingshot sides start their attacks. Bulldogs were the same in their game. It's all slingshot. And I think we've seen a drop-off considerably in that sort of half-forward line. People just aren't getting the tackling. They're not getting into position. And then the mids get overrun, then the backs get overrun because the ball just comes in too quickly. You haven't got time to compress to be able to set up a defensive structure.
Yeah, I think they're all good points. I mean, the other thing is, I go back to my comment about tempo, is that's how we normally would. We control the tempo. If the heats, if you watch the Brisbane-Richmond game, the Brisbane-Carlton game on the weekend, the commentators were yelling, calling out for Brisbane to slow the game down and to take the heat out of it, because exactly what Carlton wanted. That was why it was so weird we never looked to do it. I mean, in the second half, I think it's fair to say we couldn't control the tempo because of their pressure. So that was a really good example of them controlling the tempo, and we couldn't find a way in. We needed to get a 3-goal lead and control the tempo, but we'd never tried to do that in the first half. And so the normal answer to that would be, we control the speed of the game by taking the heat out of it, going lateral for a little while, holding on to it. It's standard sort of play, and that's how we normally work. I'll go back to my comments. Maybe Goodies at this stage is trialling fire with fire. That's the way to combat that tactic and see who wins. They won this battle, but generally the way to do that is to control the tempo by holding onto the footy.
All right, move on. Royal Demon, hey guys, love the podcast and the website. I don't post much, but I read almost everything on Demonland, listen to the podcast each week. Just wanted to get your thoughts on the comments Ed Langdon made on the radio the day before the match. As you well know, he labelled the Pies a one-trick pony and all duck, no dinner. Comments like this were always going to be used as motivation against him and us. What do you think about these comments, George?
Yeah, whenever I hear things like this, and I think there was an article in The Age today about it, that truth is not often told in the AFL environment, and it's refreshing sometimes to hear it. Clubs cover up all sorts of things, and Andy is well aware of the injury reports that come out every fortnight about various players. There's all sorts of things hidden up in football, and I think the problem is poor old Ed was telling the truth, because let's face it, a Collingwood a one-trick pony? Probably. They're fast, quick, play-on type of team. Yeah, sure. When he was talking about ducks and dinners, we all know who he was talking about. It's the truth. Does that provide an impetus to the other side? I don't think it really does at the end of the day. They want to be really brave, macho men in the first opportunity they get to tackle Ed, but did it make any difference? Not really in the end of the game.
Yeah, it should have been 6 goals up at half time.
Yeah, and as a mate of mine was sitting next to me, he said, well, I hope they continue to boo him all game, because by the end of the game they'll be hoarse.
It's just not... Yeah, I mean, I thought it was great theatre. It's sort of one of those great theatres that you'd probably prefer, like at another club, giving us some good theatre. But I didn't actually. I thought the same thing, George. But at the time, I don't think it was a factor. I my thought was that comment that I said before, the fact that he said we look to play boring footy, it felt a bit like he was trying to set up a dynamic of we're going to come out and play super slow and bore everyone with our slow play that's going to be the antidote to their fast, high-tempo game of footy. And then we came out and did exactly the opposite. So it felt like a set play from the players, when they speak to the media, have got speaking points. Maybe that was one of them, not the all duck, no dinner thing. I mean, it made me laugh to hear that. My grandfather used to say that comment. It's an old school sort of saying. I just, the few other footy players in the AFL would have even know that phrase, let alone, to say it in their interview. But I wondered, to be honest, when I heard it, I wondered whether the point that he was trying to do is set up an expectation, in fact, that we would come out and control the tempo, play super slow, and we did exactly the opposite. So read into that what you want, but it felt a bit more like we were playing the games with those comments, and he got his wording a little bit wrong.
Well, I saw one reporter on Twitter saying how everyone was saying how refreshing his comments were, pre-game. Yeah. So don't you dare, and talking to reporters, so don't you dare now report saying that it backfired.
The club's already said they're not going to put him out for media. I mean, he's about the most intelligent bloke on our list, one of the few footballers that I want to hear, really. The one thing I will say, Ed, if I ever meet him, is that thanks to him, on the train home, had some peanut Collingwood fan who was half cut talking to his mate and talking all the way, oh, geez, that one trick's pretty good, all the way to bloody my stop, in that sort of way of talking to his mate, but in fact talking to every other Melbourne fan on the train because he was pretty loud.
That's why I jogged from the ground to the train station and got on a pretty empty train.
Right, that was a good move because I didn't really have any pithy comebacks, I have to say.
I must say, I got home, I was pretty sweaty, but it was worth it to not hear comments like that. Lazy writes the following. We had a chance to go over 4 goals up when Bailey Fritsch had that close range snap that he missed, and a 2-goal turnaround followed, cutting the margin to 17 at half-time. We had a 3-goal lead late in the third quarter with yet another chance to consolidate. Can't remember who missed, but the Pies ended up snatching 2 late goals to pull it back to single figures at the last change, giving themselves a real chance. The game really felt like one where we would threaten to break it open, but Collingwood would somehow minimise the damage with a 50-50 chance turned into a goal, and this kept them in touch. It's happened a lot this season. There's been multiple games where a series of things needed to happen for us to lose the game from seemingly winnable positions that we had. Do we need to take a good look at why this is the case? Possibly on the mental side, is this if this was any other team, I feel like the media would be branding us chokers every week. Do you think there's anything we can do about this? Is this a problem? Is it a mental problem?
Well, the trend is your friend. I mean, I wouldn't have said so a while ago, but I think in this game, I don't think we choked in this game. It's that we didn't take our chances and they did. But, I guess that could be defined as a choke. But, it's certainly been a pattern, hasn't it? We've given up now. That's, we got out to what was our biggest lead in this match?
24 points, I think, or 23 points.
23. So that's at least the 5th or 6th time that's
4
happened.
Goals.
It's
happened. What are we? Freo, Sydney, Bulldogs, now Collingwood. Who else?
So the short answer is I wouldn't have said so, but it's, as I say, the trend is your friend, and it's, there's an interesting question coming up about whether we miss Burgess. And one of the things about Burgess is that, I think that he was as much a psychologist almost as a sports scientist in terms of what he contributed to the club. And, it's really hard to quantify, but, we believe in a funny way, Collingwood are very similar to our last year, is that when you get on a rhythm of winning games where you're down, which is different, exact opposite problem to losing games when you're up, I guess, is you get practice doing it. It didn't feel like once they got the lead, I didn't feel like I wasn't confident we were going to come back. But, I think a lot of those 5 or 6 or the 7 that George were during that period where we were most heavily affected by fatigue, not in this case, it wasn't. I think partly the answer, though, in this case was what I'm saying. If you play fast, aggressive footy, well, you open up rebound opportunities. And they were, as George said at the top, they were good enough to take those chances. On any other day, just on AFL average, even though they've got good shots for goal, they're not 8-2 at half time. They're 7-2 or 7-3 or something. That's statistically 8-2. Their kicking was fantastic. I mean, the kicking in the first quarter was hilarious because it was 5-zip to 4-zip at one stage, and my mate said, this isn't going to last, and sure enough, we kept on kicking point after point after point after that.
The other thing I think that's changed partially across all teams is that Goody alluded to it last year, is that there are phases in the game of momentum. Now, as you push in a game, you'll get 2 or 3 goals, 4 goals up, then you'll drop off simply because you're playing that manic style of game. You've got to expect to drop off a little bit. I mean, the classic was the Carlton Brisbane game this year. If you watch that one, it was just all over, completely over, and then the momentum swings. And then it swings back again. So it's not just happening to us; it's happening to all sorts of teams. Look at Collingwood in this game. They were down, they were up. They were down, they were up. It's not surprising that we're just seeing it from the Melbourne supporters' perspective a little bit.
And what we're not doing that we did last year was, if we got a 4-goal lead, we would hold that. Now, other teams have recognised perhaps that you can't play slow footy against us. You'll just get smashed. Like, we remember back at when we played Port, Port tried to beat us by a million cuts and just played, could barely score a goal. It's just not going to work anymore, is it? So the only way now is to sort of to go fast, I guess, to beat us. So, but we haven't been able to control the tempo, or we're choosing not to, whether, it's hard to think that that's conscious, but it was in this game. It felt like it was conscious in this game. We never looked to control the tempo in that first half, and not at all in the Dogs game.
Well, I guarantee you that Sydney, Geelong, Collingwood again will all try that very fast game style against us. So we've got to come up with something that...
And that's what Goody said. You've got to listen to... Goody's really honest, and he said that. I heard him speak at a breakfast, and he was saying that the game changes 3 times in a season tactically, and that the game is always shifting tactically. Teams have responded to the way we played last year and figured out the only way to do it is to go ballistic and go fast. Only some teams have the capacity to do that for an extended period of time. I'm really hoping Collingwood's not one of them. But we're having to respond to that.
Lefty, Demonland poster Lefty says, many clubs are using their subs, whether above board or not, to their advantage, bringing on fresh legs late in the game. The Pies subbed out the underperforming Hoskin Elliott under the guise of an injury. We seem to be one of the good guys clubs that haven't used this loophole. Do you think the Demons should have found an injury and perhaps substituted James Harmes into the game to give us some fresh legs? What do you guys think about the use of the sub? I think there's been a thread on Demonland sort of discussing that and whether we should... be a bit underhanded.
I reckon it's a great question. I hadn't given it any thought whatsoever before I read that question. I think it's a great question. I don't know about playing the game, but Hoskin Elliott had no influence, and we could have done with the run. Jordan, I thought, had a good game. There's a question about him coming up, but I thought he had a good game, but he looked a little bit tired. It would have been great to have Harmes come on fresh, and we needed a bit of that injection. So I'm not sure whether that's, is it good being the good guys or...
I haven't done any research into whether teams have used players and then they've
it's impossible really to know,
I guess if they play the next week, are they really that injured?
Yeah, well, that's a point.
I think, obviously if you get the concussion...
bloody rule, anyway.
They should change it. Look, there's a few things I would do to change it. Obviously concussion, they have, if they're judged to be concussed, they have to miss 12 days or whatever it is. I think if a player comes off with the sub, perhaps maybe that player has to miss the next week, regardless of what it is. Or allow the other team, as soon as you've activated the sub,
Well, that should be
the other team automatically, their players in play. If they've got 5 on the bench, they've got 5 rotations on the bench. And that's,
I agree. That's the obvious answer, because then if they are gaming the system, then you don't even have to worry about Oscar Elliott comes on.
All of a sudden, Harms is in the game. And if you want to use him...
Or you've got the choice. You don't have to.
No, you don't have to, but he's available.
Yeah,
and
I reckon that's the obvious answer.
It just makes it fair. And look, sure, there are legitimate injuries early in the game, first quarter, second quarter, late in the... But
look, what do you guys think of Harms not being selected?
Look, I think the question was, who was he going to come in for?
They've got a role for Melksham, so...
he wasn't going to play Melksham's role.
And
but
who else?
We missed him. The bottom line is we missed him, and he was sitting on the bench. So it's a great question. I would have loved to have seen him on.
You could say Nibbler, but then again, Big Man, last week you were talking about Nibbler.
Nibbler, of course.
But you said Nibbler, and he's protecting space and being able to run.
Well,
100
Harms
kilometres
isn't going to replace Nibbler either.
That's right. So I'm asking. The question is, who does he replace in the team?
Well, we'll find out this week.
Yeah, because I think
I'll
he'll be
run
back.
naked around the MCG if Harms doesn't come into the game this week.
I think the question will stay the same though. Who does he replace?
We'll talk about that shortly, or when we get to it. We have a question from a listener from our Demonland Facebook page. He messaged us through the Messenger app. This is from Andrew H. And Andrew says, question for the pod, if able, do you think Geelong will be at a disadvantage playing finals on the MCG rather than their home ground? Long-time listener and Trident member. George, I know that you always have something to say about Geelong and their narrow home ground, and whether they will be able to parlay that into final success or not.
I think there's absolutely no doubt that Geelong will struggle again at the very pointy end. I'm looking up some of their statistics. Between 2012 and 2021, and we've got the same result this year, they won 70.6% of all their games.
I think they're a different beast this year, though.
They might be, and they've during that period, they won 1 preliminary final out of 6. I think that all credit to them. Their ground, in particular, they've utilised the shape of their ground to advantage themselves. The draw has been very favourable to them as to who they get down there, and they've taken, like I said, all credit to them. They've utilised it best, but their ground, I think their ground is their problem. The ground has shaped their game style. I think they also have utilised it very well in the sense that they play a lot through the middle because they've got a really strong central spine with talls in every position, starting at Stewart, De Koning, Stanley, B. Clabs, Cameron and Hawkins, all big, tall players sitting down, so you can attack through the middle because you've always got a target. But down at Cardinia Park, you don't need to move on the outside. Now, as soon as you move to the MCG, there's 2,300 square metres of playing space more than what you've got at Cardinia Park. So you're going to need to run further. You're going to have to run longer. The statistics on one side I saw, there's actually 65 square metres less at Cardinia Park for each and every player. It's an enormous amount of space they have to cover. And guess what? Geelong's got an old list. We're already starting to see Dangerfield's injured again this week with another calf injury. Selwood's barely getting onto the ground sort of for more than 60% of the time. They've got these old legs. They'll get to the final. They're going to be expected to run a lot more in a lot more space. They are definitely playing a different game style, but I think unfortunately that they're just not used to playing anything other than the small ground down at Cardinia Park.
I agree with all of that. The only thing I'd say is that the model now that's going to be the model to take Melbourne on and that is going to win the flag this year is the ability to win those one-on-one contest ahead of the ball, when the post-clearance contested possessions is hugely, hugely important now. To score from turnover is hugely important. And the ability to do what I was saying last week that I didn't think Collingwood would be able to sustain for the whole match, but did, was to win through the corridor and go through teams. Geelong have got a lot of strong players who are able to do that, and that's going to be there. That's, when Scott talks about them sitting down before the season and saying, well, let's play to our strengths, that's one of them. They've got a lot of physically strong players like Tui, Selwood, I take the point that they're older, Blickvards, they've got a lot of physically strong players who can stand up in tackles, win those balls like De Goey did in that last quarter so impressively. The one thing about that I would say, Melbourne don't play that ballistic style in the way that Collingwood do, in the way Geelong will want to do. One thing I'll say about that model is that if Collingwood are going to make a push for the flag, they're going to have to keep playing that same wave now for the next 7 weeks, and so will Geelong. And that's when Geelong are going to start, their age comes into it, because that is a incredibly physically taxing way to play footy. It's like rugby. It's like a brutal game of rugby where there's, the tackling in that game on the last Friday night was as brutal as I can remember. It was amazing. Their tackling numbers were off the charts, but also the intense way that they really tackle to hurt. That's a pretty hard model to sustain for 2 more months.
Raskability has a comment. Hey guys, love the show. It got me through the hard times of 2019 and 2020. Then in 2021, I love sharing the ride with you guys. Tonight's episode can't come quick enough. I need the closure. I've avoided podcasts, live radios, apps, websites, social since Friday. The only medicine for my MFCSS is the Demonland podcast. My thoughts on this game. Pies kicked 15 goals, 6 and 2 rushed. D's are missing 25 metres out directly in front. And, raskability for me. That's just the way luck is at times. The Pies had the perfect storm of kicking straight, getting some very, very arsey frees directly in front of goals. In addition, I thought they were also very lucky in that the ball just seemed to bounce their way quite a number of times, and conversely for us, the balls just weren't bouncing our way at all. One time it went over Ben Brown's head, and instead of landing in Fritch's hands, it just bounced to the side. Just nothing sort of went right with us in that department, and then add to that our inaccuracy. D. Old Fart has a question on behalf of our coaching staff. Could the panel please dissect our forward half woes and advise how to address them quickly and easily? Time is running out. Thanks. I think he was a bit tongue-in-cheek with that one. We don't need to go into that.
Kick straight.
We'll talk about our forward line woes in a minute, but we do. Oh, we got a. Oh, I thought we had a caller for a sec. He's gone away. Yes, it was a win for the ages. Says there are so many instances against the black and white team where we were forward facing, about to enter 50, and we just blazed away to a 2-on-3 situation. Numerous occasions we had open options for players to take an extra second, observe either a handball or a kick to players that were wide open and no one within 20 metres. This happened at least half a dozen times Friday night. It's a simple fix, but we've been saying this.
Australia 4 +6143898.
It's meant to go on mute. That's that one. Apologise for that.
I was, as I said, I was at. Oh, sorry, Annie.
I did have more to say about that, just in terms of us burning opponents. AFL.com.au's access all areas with Matthew Lloyd and Barrett highlighted a few of these instances in the first quarter where we were 3-1. Jordan is on the 50. He ignores Oliver, who is clearly open about 35 out directly in front of goal, and he just bombs it into the square. Then still in the first quarter, we were 4-3. Jackson was clear and running into 50 and could have handballed easily to an open Cozzy who would have been running into goal, and instead he bombs it long to Fritch, and that was when Fritch took that really good mark. He kicked the goal anyway, so that worked out well, but he really burnt a player that was on his own. In the second, when we were 8-6, Rivers is running up the wing to half forward, and he ignores the open Sparrow right on the half forward 50-metre arc, and he instead bombs it to a 50-50 contest in the pocket. Cozzy in the third is 45 metres out, running into a goal. He takes a shot, but he burns Fritch, Gawn and Track, who are all arms wide open, 35, 30 and 15 metres out from goal all by themselves. No one near them. Cozzy ultimately misses. So, yeah, there were were a number of occasions where we burnt our own players. We do have a caller on the line. Caller, welcome to the Dreamland podcast. Who are we talking to? Oh, it's gone. Oh, hold on a sec, caller. I'm seeing it's gone off our Bluetooth. I've got to love technology. I'm just going to disconnect.
Just while you're bringing up,
Andy, go for that.
As I said, I was sitting on the members' side wing, and it were kicking towards the punt road. It was super evident how many times we left players by themselves.
Probably more our back line than our forward line.
Oh, hold on a sec, caller. Hold on a sec, caller.
Problem.
Hold on a sec, caller. We'll get to you 1 sec.
And just the final thought, just on Cozzy, as I said, I don't reckon he had a great game, and there was a moment where I'm not quite sure what he was thinking, and it wasn't commented on much on Demonland, but he went up for a half-hearted effort to mark, I thought, and put his sort of arm up. He was there to mark it. I couldn't believe it. It was like he misjudged it, but, you know, to be nice, he misjudged it. To be harsh, he squibbed it right in front of goals, kicking to the punt road end. I think in the last quarter, it was a big moment, I thought, in the game.
Sorry about that, caller. So now we've got you. Who am I talking to?
Yes, it's Garbo.
Hey, Garbo, how you going?
Hey, good. I was just calling probably more to comment on our backline at the moment, or what I think is common in all our losses, which was our inability to deal with the smalls of the other team. So, like as in May and Lever and Petty can all do a good job of locking down the talls like Hawkins and Cameron, but we don't seem to have any answer to the smalls who can get out the back and beat players like Hibbert and Salem on the rebound. Just wanted to know your thoughts on it.
Big man, you putting your hand up?
I agree, Garbo. That's been a challenge for us since Jets in 2018 when he was almost all Australian that year. We haven't had that small defender. As I said earlier, I thought they played Elliott super smart by dragging Hibbo back to the square. I was surprised they didn't take Hibbo off him actually because he was carving him up. But it's exactly that. I would say not just the smalls, it's the mediums, it's the Elliott size player that we struggle with. And, you know, I think that Bowie not in there and Gus not in there, well, probably particularly Gus, because Gus has been so good at dropping back into that hole and taking and providing some cover for those mediums. But no, I agree. I think that's sort of our defensive weakness and has been for a while. It always makes me nervous. The Lions have a number. I mean, all teams have that good medium-sized player. Elliott's just, I think he's one of my favourite non-Melbourne players. He's smart footballer, uses his body well, takes his chances when he gets them, and he gave Hibbo a right bath, I thought.
Garbo?
Oh, definitely. I was just going to say, who do you think can, play that role? I mean, to me, Brayshaw's maybe a touch to one pace. I would have thought we need someone with a bit more speed to, run back if they're going to be isolated last man behind the ball.
Bedford was playing that role for a little bit, wasn't he? Was he playing on the halfback flank at all, Bedford?
I don't recall that, unless it's Casey.
They didn't try him at all down there.
He's barely played a game before.
Yeah.
This year.
No, I meant at Casey. I didn't mean at the D's. Yeah.
I think the one that we've forgotten about is actually Rivers, and I think has been carrying injuries for quite some time because he used to have a good lockdown role. But yeah, he's certainly not the same player as he was last year.
And they tried Hunt early on. For the first third of the season, that was Hunt's role. He was playing that role, and I thought he did a reasonable job, but he's just not great one-on-one. And, deep, you also lose his run. So if he's not defeating his player one-on-one and he can't get that run, well, his spot comes into question. So, Garbo, I don't reckon there's a sort of obvious answer to who at Casey would come in to fill that position. Howes is... I mean, where's he playing? He's sort of playing halfback flank, but he's not really a lockdown small.
He's only played about 3 games as well after coming back from injuries.
Yeah, and I don't know if we'd want to be swinging changes like that.
I mean, we had Lever on Ginnivan for a big chunk of the match, didn't we? He was there, but he's their premier small, Ginnivan, or one of their better smalls, and we had Lever on him for most of the game.
Travie14 in the chat room has said Joel Smith is a good matchup for Elliott, but only bring him into the team for those matchups, not every week.
Or as a key forward.
Well, he has been training with the forwards, according to the track watchers. So if he does come in, it might be as that forward. Anything else, Garbo, before we move on?
No, that was it. I was hoping for some solace, but I guess I'll just have to wait till finals and
you won't find
hopefully
any
they
solace
can
there.
figure it out then.
Okay, thanks, Garbo. Appreciate the call.
All right.
Cheers.
Cheers.
That'll teach me. I should have it on. I should have the Skype on mute until the call comes in. Where were we? Billy Bean had a couple of comments. We're dying a death of 1,000 cuts this year. The little things that went for us, right for us last year, are going against us this year. Injury, COVID, unstable side, Stephen May incident, loading fatigue, general fatigue, being the hunted. No need to comment on that. It's just a general comment from one of our listeners.
Although, I would chuck in there on that comment, though, is that thing about the mental resilience, like, I think there's a lot of talk about whether missing Burgess. I said before, I think one of the things he brought to the role was that mental aspect of it. But to be fair to Selwyn Griffith, like, we won't know until the end of the season. I think we're tracking fantastically. But if you think about all of the Fugazi that we've had this year that we didn't have last year, we've got the May incident, the May Melksham incident. We've got the white noise around Jackson. Will he go? Won't he go? We've got the injuries, in-game injuries that we've suffered. We've got the serious injuries. We've had T-Mac out, which I said before he got injured, is our second tall is really our biggest problem. We can't afford to have an injury to BB or T-Mac, and then we get T-Mac out. We've had a lot go wrong this year, COVID. So, given all of those things, I think that, we're in pretty amazing shape. And I mean, just in terms of the solace and confidence, is that it was a shocking loss. It was a loss, bad to be there and to lose, but we played, as I said, that's the best footy we've played this year by some margin, in entirety of the game, including factoring in the loss. So, if you rate Pies, do you guys rate Pies a contender on the back of that?
Absolutely.
I think you have to.
Yeah, 11 games straight they've won. It doesn't matter who they've still won the games, no matter who they're playing.
Yeah. So if you ask 10 footy fans, are they a contender? 10 would say yes. So we should have beaten them. So ipso facto, if they're a contender, we're also right in the frame to win the flag. So, like, there should be no, the risk is if we lose one of the next two, we could fall out of the top four, and that's really hard to win from outside the top four. So that's a reality. It's a bad loss from that perspective. But if you legitimately think Collingwood are a contender for the flag this year, well, we should have beaten that team by 4 goals. So we're and we're at 75% of that where we're going to be when we in 5-6 weeks time come the finals, and they're probably at their very limit. So next time we play them, if we play them again, let's hope we do play them in the finals. We'll hopefully be in a different position preparation-wise.
I'm just going to skip past a couple of, sorry, Demon WA, I'm skipping past your question only because we have discussed it a bit. Red Sox man, he was the one that brought up the Burgess thing. Can we please discuss if we're missing Burgess this year compared to last? But Big Man, you sort of said we can't really judge that yet.
We won't know. I mean, that's the thing. We won't know until the end. I mean, I think all of the markers are. We played it, as I said, if you go back and watch that West Coast game, you're probably not that interested in doing so. But if you do, I was really surprised how scrappy we were in that match. In my mind's eye, looking back at it, I thought we were dominant in that game. But in fact, we weren't dominant. We were level at half time. It was a 10-minute burst of footy in the third quarter that got us the lead. Then we held it. And then they almost overrun us in the last quarter. We were way, 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 way more impressive in this game against the Pies. As I said, I reckon the most impressive we've been since the grand final win. So it's really impossible to judge Selwyn Griffith, particularly given all of that Fugazi that I was talking about, until we get to the finals. If we're not running out games come finals, well, then he can be rightly judged that he's maybe not got the program right. But until then, I think we need to hold our, judgment.
Well, there is the next question I'm going to now talks about fade outs, and there is statistical proof to back up that we have been fading out, at least in terms of scoring. Radelaide says, thanks, lads, for taking my question on the podcast last week. If I could ask another question this week, what is it with our fade-outs? Not only are we fading out at the end of matches, we are fading out at the end of some quarters and allowing our opposition a few quick goals. We just can't seem to stem the flow at times. What is the reason for this? Is it fatigue and lack of concentration? And how can we fix this? Now, before we sort of answer that, Demonland poster Rock and Roll started a thread on demonland.com entitled Second Half Fade Outs. And he says, I've been waiting to do this analysis for a little while. Just a simple look at rounds 1 to 10 compared with 11 to 21 on our scoring in quarters. So in rounds 1 to 10, our third quarter was our best, and we kept teams to under 15 points on average across all quarters in the games. In rounds 11 to 21, in the first half, we were beating the oppositions on average 49 to 32. So in the second half of the year, we are beating the teams in the first half, but our second halves, we're horrid, averaging 30 points, where our opposition is coming home with a surge, averaging 40 points. So basically the data is saying that we're fading in the last halves. We've seen it with our own eyes. We're not scoring as much and are being scored against. Why? Is this is the non-Burgess factor, as Red Sox man asks? Is it all in the player's head? Is it losing? Is it the curse? Are the bookies responsible, big man? And more importantly, how do we fix it, and can it be fixed in the short term?
Oh, look, I mean, I don't want to flog a dead horse, but I mean, those numbers are pretty strong evidence to, it's around the round 11 is that heavy loading period. It goes for 2 months. That jibes exactly with those numbers where, if you think of an Olympic swimmer who's going to swim in a final at the last week of September, 7 weeks out, they're not swimming their finals time, are they? Then that just doesn't happen. So we are in that phase of preparation. So the numbers that Rock and Roll, that's a great stats, but they're just stark. They're the numbers you get when you've got a program. Now, of course, people could say, well, what about other clubs? I don't know. I don't know what the numbers of other clubs. I don't know what numbers of Geelong are. Or, you could make that argument to around and round till the cows come home. But to me, the answer is fatigue. You could see it in this game. We didn't run it out. Now, we were 3 goals for to 7 goals for in the last half. Yeah, so, I mean, that's my point about the tempo thing. That's the thing that I found weird about not doing it, because if we'd spent 10 minutes in the second quarter playing controlled tempo and slow and bring the heat of the game, maybe would have had enough fuel in the tank to go right to the end of the wire. But you didn't need to be a sports scientist if you're watching at that ground to see that they were fresher in the last 10 minutes of that game than we were. I thought we ran out the game fine. It was 100% not an excuse. That's not why we lost the game, 100%. We lost the game. I'd say the crowd was as big a factor, if not bigger than that fatigue, to be honest. We missed it. We lost it because we didn't kick straight and we didn't take our chances, and they did. But those numbers are a pretty stark evidence, I would have thought, to say fatigue's the issue.
Big Mac Jr. says, I was buoyed by this game. Frustration comes from us being the better team and kicking ourselves in the foot with poor execution and leaking easy goals. I rewatched the Pies goals, and I don't think that us at 100% effort, I don't think we allow many of them again. Would be great if you could please go through 3 areas in particular. Number 1, our back half stoppages, to get your feedback on why we were lacking pressure and allowing uncontested exit from the Pies on several occasions. You didn't notice any of that, big man?
Can you say that again?
They said on our back half stoppages, why we were lacking pressure and allowing uncontested exits from the Pies on several occasions. I think back half stoppage, I think he's talking about our forward. Forward stoppages and allowing it to come out so easily.
Oh, I reckon that's one factor, is that I thought Maxi had a great game. 32 possessions, wasn't it? Did he have 32
31
possessions?
Or something, yeah.
31. But he's not, we're not controlling those setups the way we are when he's at his best. And I just feel like something's not right with him. And I don't think Jackson's is certainly not in a super strong patch of form. And again, I mean, I hate to sort of bring it back to T-Mac all the time, but not having that extra tall down there, that leaves it to Brown. And Brown is not a natural ruckman. He's not great at it.
No, he's not
T-Mac,
strong either.
He's not strong in that way, not the way T-Mac is. So, T-Mac is a workhorse. There's the question about, Cossie's game. There's a question about Spargo. They're the players, as George has noted lots of times. They're the ones who drive that forward pressure in terms of the stoppages. I actually didn't think the Pies really punished us too badly on that. I mean, I know they move the ball well, but it
big man, you've hit mute.
So it didn't feel like they were really. It was like they beat us with strength. It did, the numbers stoppage. It didn't feel like stoppages was such a massive issue. So maybe I just missed that.
You talked about this before. There was several of our kickouts went straight down the centre.
And Hibberd took at least a third of them.
Yeah.
So it was, again, this weird thing that I've been talking all season about the importance of predictability and all of that. And on the eve of the finals, suddenly we're more unpredictable than my betting strategy.
Also good to understand why you think the Pies were outnumbering us at the fall of the ball, particularly in the second half. Why in the second half, assuming the Pies brought an extra to the contest, we overhandballed and didn't make some obvious ball movement strategy tweaks to kick it out to either contest or set up players in space like we generally do when we are on? Are they practicing the handballing part of our game so it is switched on come finals when we are making strategic changes to beat opposition?
Yeah, I reckon there's something in that. And they did bring extras to the stoppage, but really their intensity was awesome, wasn't it? So they were at us all game, and they played that like they meant it. That played like a finals. But I reckon that last point, that feels like the case, is that it looks like we're trying to add some elements to our game now in preparation for the finals. And again, that's what I was saying at the top. It felt a little bit like in that last quarter, we didn't look as predictable to each other, and our system didn't look as strong in that last quarter, and all of those ring around the handballs. But that was a continuation of what we were doing in the first half. So it was like we had a strategy. That's what we're going to do, and Goody was like, keep doing it.
Big Mac Jr. also goes on to say, all in all, even despite the mishaps, if we kick the AFL average in front of goal and don't have a couple of turnovers where we were out for easy goals, we should have still won by 3 to 5 goals despite the above breakdowns. Definitely not panic stations, nor were the Pies the better team. They won, but if we played 100 times, we would probably win this game 95 times. So he's got more confidence in the 8 out of 10 than you gave, B-Man.
Not if we don't kick straight, though.
No. I've got a voicemail to play from Noah, who left Noah from Brighton. Sorry, I've just got to turn on my other computer. Now, at times, it's a little hard to hear. I boosted the sound a bit, and I can just read out the part at the end that I got. So we'll just play it because he took the time to leave the voice message. So, Noah, this is from you.
Hi, guys. This is Noah from Brighton, the D's man, D's supporter. I've got a question that I want to pose to the guys this week on the podcast. Just wanted to know, after the Collingwood game, which was a bitterly disappointing series, do you really think with all the injuries and the lack of forward line, goals kicked straight, that we've really got what it takes to play this year? Just wanted to see your thoughts and opinions. And do you think that our forward line this year in general has let us down? Lack of tackle pressure and inability to kick goals straight.
Basically, I wanted to play it because he did take the time to call. He said, "Do you really think, with all the injuries and the lack of forward line goals kicked, lack of forward line goals kicked straight, meaning we didn't kick straight, that we've really got what it takes to go all the way this year? Just want to hear your thoughts and opinion on whether our forward line, which has let us down with the lack of tackle pressure and abilities to kick straight for goal." So he just wants to know if you still think we can go all the way.
I absolutely think we can, and I 100% think we can. I go back to my question before. If you think the Pies if you legitimately think the Pies are contenders for the flag this year, well, we should have beaten them, and we're at 75% of where we're going to be. So just objectively, yes, we've got we're in a really good position still. If we fall out of the top four, that's going to be a problem. So it's critical that we win the next two. I might have a different tale if we get beaten next week, but 100%. I hear the comments about the forward line. I understand that, but I think there's a risk of over-egging the pudding in that space. Even in this game, with all of our forward line woes, if we'd kicked accurately, no one would be talking about our forward line, nor at least not in the same way. We kicked the winning score, and it's we've been kicking enough goals. It's been leaking goal. Our defence is been the issue. So yes, remain extremely confident we can win the flag. Two, I think the second question, the big issue for me, the big question is we have to bring in a second tall if we're going to continue to play the way we're playing. And I don't understand. So, yeah, I can't see. We either have to change the model, and I can't see them doing that, although we're making those tweaks. But who comes in? And I think it has to be Smith or JVR. And I think JVR is probably too young to expect him to come in and play that role. So maybe it's Smith.
Hold on.
I don't think it'll be Smith either. He's only played one game at Casey, and they've already said he's only going to play limited minutes in the next game. Yeah, so for me, JVR is the easy one to come in. But,
we'll get to that in a minute. We have another question from our Demonland Facebook page messenger, this time from Tristan F. Thanks for the podcast. I enjoy the analysis each week, so keep it up as it keeps me sane. I want to ask what you think about having an ex-ruckman as our forward line coach. Clearly, this is an area where we struggle in terms of leading patterns and players all competing and flying for the same ball. Add to that, we often don't have anyone staying down to mop up. Something isn't working when you lose despite having 20 plus more entries. What are your thoughts on our forward line coach? Should we target an actual credentialed forward to come in and sort this mess out next season? George, do you think we need a dedicated forward line coach who has actual real world experience as a key forward or a forward?
There's a couple of things that people overlook, unfortunately, when we're talking about this. Firstly is just because someone kicks goals in a previous employment position doesn't make them teachers. You've got to be able to teach someone else how to kick the goals or the leading patterns and all things like that are required as a forward coach. The other thing that's happened in the last couple of years because of COVID, they've imposed soft caps. So where we used to have specialist forward coaches, we no longer have them. People are doing multiple roles at the moment. Now, I'll give you some names that are slated as forward coaches in addition to other roles at other clubs. Brendan Lade is the forward coach at St Kilda, a ruckman. Luke Webster.
Wait 1 sec. Have you seen how their key forward kicks for goal and how many points he kicks?
Yeah, but
yes, I take your point. But.
Yeah, Luke Webster at West Coast, never heard of him. Geelong actually don't have any forward coach.
They two best forwards in the league.
Yeah, Ashley Hansen at Carlton, again.
Yeah. Is he a rider?
Yeah, I think so. Hayden Skipworth at Collingwood. Matt Spanner at Western Bulldogs. Stevie J is the only one that I know of at GWS who's a forward coach.
Spanner keeps screwing things up too down there.
David, very good. David Hale at Hawthorn, an ex ruckman. So really, when you start to look through the list, there aren't too many ex forwards playing.
Are these clubs all doubling up ruckman and their forward coaches?
That's exactly what they're doing because they can't afford to employ specialist coaches anymore in multiple positions. So the names that you would think about who are the best forwards, people like Brereton, Dunstall, Brian Taylor and Carey, they're obviously best suited for media for their highly qualified insights into the game. So there aren't too many people out there. But, yeah, it's all about roles at the moment. We'll go back to that in the future, no doubt, when the soft caps are eased, hopefully in the future. But at the moment, we're not any different from any of the other clubs, and certainly the top clubs in the competition.
I would say, yeah, I think that's all. That's great points, George. And I mean, I'm not qualified to say what they do as the forward role. I mean, partly it's a system. If we've got a particular way, and whoever the forward coach, he doesn't come up with that. It's good his overarching strategy. But what I would say is, again, I sheet it home to our terrible kicking. I mean, I've been posting on Demon Land for a fair while now, 10 years, I realised the other day when I looked at over 10 years. And I've been complaining about our kicking ever since then. It's like I've been complaining about our kicking since the bloody 70s. We are a poor kicking side. Our system gets us through a lot. But, if I was looking to invest personally, I'd be investing. I mean, we've got Williams, I guess, who's improved their kicking. But, I would personally, I'd put a huge emphasis on it in the players we recruit. It'd be almost my number one attribute. And secondly, I don't know what sort of training they do in terms of their kicking for goal, but whatever it is, do more of it.
All right, well, let's move on to the ins and outs. And Casey had what seemed like their 10th bye for the season. So unfortunately, some of the players that are knocking on the door to get into the seniors, they really didn't get the opportunity to show their wares on the weekend. Before we get into the changes, we have a question from El Diablo 14. Is it, and this is now you can go ahead with your JVR, is it worthy to give JVR a go in this late in the season? At the very least, he can be an unpredictable player for opposition defenders. And you all know my thoughts on this. And this is me now talking, Andy. I think we should have given JVR a call-up long ago. In the perfect world with Brown and T-Mac fit and in the side, we would have had the luxury of allowing JVR to develop in the twos and give him a call-up at some time next year. However, with the woes that we've been experienced with our tall forward stocks and the Weed and then the other Brown and then Weed again and again and again, all failing to bear fruit, I reckon it's way past time to give JVR a go. And like you said, like El Diablo said, at the very least, he might be an unpredictable player for oppositions to match up on. Our opposition last week played a third or fourth gamer and he kicked 4 goals. I fear it might be too late to swing a change like this, but playing one tall and the resting ruckman, as we've mentioned, isn't working either. And well, big man, you think Weed might be the answer, but
who's their player? Who's their player?
That guy Johnson. Ash Johnson was.
He's
playing
24 though. So,
yeah, but he's playing his fourth game of football still. Bigger body.
He's got a man's body, not a kid's body. I mean, that's the difference. So,
but JVR's has got a decent size to him. I would ask the question: if not, why not? We are desperate for a target up there. In this game against Collingwood, I got sick of the number of times that Melcham at 186 centimetres is standing alongside Moore at 203. The number of times,
and did a pretty good job. But I take the point. Yeah, and we kept on going to as if we had a second tall.
Yeah. Cozzy quite often was matched when the ball's coming down there. He's trying to outmatch someone like a Crisp or a Maynard. It's just not going to happen. We need that second tall down there.
Yeah,
we do. It's as simple as that. And who else have we got? No one else other than JVR.
No. All right, I'm sold. Bring JVR in, and
Harms probably comes in for someone.
JVR, let's release him.
As someone, I'm just trying to find where it was in the chat room. Your Graham Yates's mullet. You said Harms. That's a great name too, by the way. Harms needed to play defensive mid, Brayshaw to defence, and Hunt misses out.
I totally agree.
So maybe it's Hunt that comes out and Brayshaw goes back to defence.
Strange decision to have Gus into the midfield at this time of year.
Played quite well at times.
Well, he did.
But we need two. It's another one. We need 2 of him.
They did, yeah. All right. I mean, maybe JVR was thinking this week, but they legitimately thought, do we want to, put him in front of those Pies fans to go on bananas? And I mean, but
I reckon there'll be a big crowd.
Another 60,000 probably this week.
At least 60 this week.
But Carlton haven't got a patch on the Pies fans.
Before we go into opposition watch and talk about Carlton, how did you feel about being absolutely outnumbered at our home game?
It was fantastic.
Well, for the gate
Andy.
receipts, yes.
Yeah.
Without the gate receipts, I would have happily chipped in to kick some of them out.
Look, much as the fella on the train actually was pretty funny. It's not my sort of shtick, but I read on Demonland a few other people getting on the train on the way home didn't have quite such a funny experience. Had people chanting USA and a bunch of half-cut young blokes. It was formidable, and I couldn't help, to be perfectly honest, I was jealous. I was like, their noise was unbelievable in that last quarter. I'm trying to rack my brains. The last time I felt like that was in the Geelong Melbourne game, but it was us. It was Melbourne fans up and about that night.
Do you think that evens out in the finals? Like if we play them in the first semi or whatever, first qualifying finals, is that even because you don't? I don't know.
The allocations are even to each club. Yeah.
Well, we should see if we could fix that. We're powerful enough as we've got all of those powerful supporters. We should be able to make it 80% us, 20% Pies fans somehow, sort of gerrymandering or something. I don't know whether it will, but it was definitely a factor, and it was loud. It was so loud.
Yeah. It was finals. That was finals footy.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's get into our opposition wash. After starting the year on fire with a 10-2 start, the Blues have only won 2 of their next 8 games, and those 2 victories were against the 16th placed Giants and the 17th placed Eagles. The Blues could be in danger of missing the finals if they lose both of their remaining games. A win in either of those games will ensure them a place in the top 8. So despite their recent form, the Blues have a lot to play for this week. George and B-Man, you've been keeping an eye on the Blue Baggers, I hope. What can we expect from them this week? Who wants to take the Blues first?
All right, I'll start because I don't know what to expect from the Blues this week. The game against Brisbane was really strange. Brisbane had the game absolutely, completely and utterly locked up. I think they were 57 points up at three-quarter time, something ridiculous. And then Carlton kicked 8 goals, one in the last quarter, and got within 15 points about halfway through. It was just incredible. They are really, really dependent upon Walsh and Cripps in particular in the middle, and they are fantastic players to be able to generate their forward thrusts. The Sard in the back line was fantastic. He had over 500 metres gained in this game, so they depend on getting the ball in him. Curno's fantastic. Surprisingly, McKay has only kicked 4 goals in the last 4 games, so there may be something wrong with him. And of course, the big question on everyone's lips this week will be whether Cripps gets suspended or not. The news is that he has been as of tonight, but no doubt that'll be appealed.
2 down to 1 we want, so he plays against Collingwood.
Yeah. Yes. Carlton certainly did not like the physical aspects that Brisbane brought into the game at times. Once Brisbane reasserted their dominance in that last 10 minutes of the game, when Carlton got within the 15 points, Carlton just faded away very, very quickly. McInerney in the middle for Brisbane was fantastic. I think he had
killed him, didn't he?
Absolutely killed him. Particularly, he was only playing against De Koning as their first ruck, and Silvani's their second ruck. So McInerney, for me, basically won the game for them because he just giving them drive out of the middle. I think he had 9 clearances out of the middle alone. It was just incredible. So, but with Cripps and Walsh in the middle, Carlton were able to negate a lot of that effect. But that could also be our big one would with Gawn and Jackson in the middle, where we've got far superior rucks in that situation. So it'll be an interesting game.
If we play like we did on Friday night, I can't see them getting close now. The risk of getting it wrong last week. I don't think I got it wrong about the Demons. I got it wrong about the Pies, but I'm pretty confident that I'm not going to get it wrong about the Blues. Their model is, I think we've established that the only way the way to beat us, the template to beat Melbourne, is to go through us and to go hard and fast through us. If Cripps doesn't play, and I think Hewitt's almost definitely out.
Hewitt is out, yep.
He's out,
for the
and one
remainder
of
of
their
the
other
season.
starting mids is out. So
Chera is the other one, but he's playing.
He's playing, but even Hewitt's a big body. Cripps, they need to be able to win those midfield battles. They don't have a De Goey. They don't. Adams. One of my thoughts last week was Adams would be a huge factor. It makes it even more impressive how strong they were in the contest without Adams. I thought I couldn't be more impressed with the Pies. But I watched that game. For some reason or other, I haven't watched many Collingwood games this year but I've watched quite a few of the Blues games. And that game was everything bad about them. And funnily enough, everything bad about Brisbane. Their inability to stop Carlton getting on a tear was just ridiculous, especially after what had happened the previous week against the Tigers. It was terrible defence. I mean, for me, the problem for Carlton is that, exactly as you say, they rely on their stoppages to generate their goals. When you have a particular thing where you generate your goals from, you can if that's taken away from them, that's a problem. Their other big problem is, I think, their forward line, because McKay and Curnow, both great players, good marks. I'd love it both at Melbourne, that's for sure. But if they're not marking and kicking goals, they don't bring hardly anything else to that team. They don't get up the ground. McKay a little bit. He plays a little bit of that T-Mac role, but he doesn't look like he's got the tank. He looks like he's carrying a bit of an injury. And Curnow is completely goes missing if he's not kicking goals. Cripps is massive out for them. Surely he'll go for that. He absolutely deserves to. I could not believe the commentary about it. It was pathetic. Darcy was basically lauding what he did. It was like, it's absolutely, I can't, 2 weeks. He's lucky to get 2 weeks. It should be more. And so, he's going to be a massive out. I think Hewitt's a really big out as well.
Kennedy's also out for them, and I reckon he's, when you
Kennedy's the other player. Kennedy's the other player.
That's three.
Yeah, exactly.
If Cripps is out, that's three midfielders at least: Walsh and Jera.
And look for us to go ballistic again. I mean, it'd be really interesting, because if we go ballistic again, their big problem is their defence. They could not stop Brisbane defensively. It wasn't like you're right, George. They couldn't handle Brisbane's pressure early on, but their structure down back, they could not handle it. Now they've been really decimated with injuries. Their big loss, of course, is Omac not being out. That really cruelled their whole season, not having that champion for them down back, but. But they do really struggle now defensively. They haven't got a sort of sophisticated zone defence back there, and Brisbane just opened them up. And just one more Binman's punting stories is I was wrapped how that last quarter went, because I backed the over 181 point total match point and never looked likely until suddenly Brisbane and Carlton started scoring goals every bloody 2 minutes. It was fantastic. So I loved watching that game.
Well, thankfully Carlton did wake up in the end, because otherwise Brisbane would have overtaken us on percentage.
That's exactly right, yes.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you to all of our listeners who submitted questions or comments. Thank you to Wells11, Dr. Gonzo at the Break of Gorn, Royal Demon, Lazy, Lefty, Rascability. Yes, it was a win for the ages. Billy Bean, Demon WA, which I didn't get to your question. Red Sox Man, Radelaide, Big Mac Jr., El Diablo 14. Thank you to our Facebook page messengers, Andrew H. and Tristan F. Thank you to our voicemailer, Noah, for leaving a message. Thank you to our caller, Garbo. Thank you to our listeners, and thank you to my co-hosts, George and Binman. And we'll be back next week, hopefully discussing getting back on the winners list and denting the Blues' chances of making the 8. Go Demons.
Go Redleggers, and keep the faith, Demon and Demonland fans. We're still on track.
You heard it here first. Go D's.
Go Redleggers.